Never before have we been faced with so many choices about how we should think, act, and live. How should we spend our time, our resources, and our money?
Blessed are the pure in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
How do we view ourselves and those around us?
Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted.
How can we find true success and lasting happiness?
Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land.
How can we know what is right and true?
Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God.
How can we make sense of suffering and loss?
Blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
And those of us who want to continue with Jesus need to choose Him and choose each other in a deeper way.
Welcome to the choices we face.
Welcome to another week of The Choices We Face. Every year, we want to have on this program Dr. Janet Smith, who's an expert in all kinds of biomedical life issues. And Janet is maybe most known for a tape she did called Contraception, Why Not? And we're getting close to 1 million copies, 900,000.
Yeah.
That's amazing, yeah. Dr. Smith is on the faculty. She's a chair holder at Sacred Heart Major Seminary in the Archdiocese of Detroit, and our offices are a couple doors from each other, and we have the pleasure, joy of working together. And Peter Herbeck's with us also, and he's the Director of Missions for Renewal Ministries. And Janet, it just seems like every time we look at the newspaper, there's another life issue and ethical questions being raised. And why don't you just give us a little update about your own activities and what you've been doing and what you see happening? And
well, you're right about that. I mean, I do teach bioethics, and every year I have to pretty significantly revise the curriculum because there's always new issues that come up that you need to deal with. Most of these issues, like I want to say, and to some extent, a lot of them go honestly back to contraception. If we'd held the line on contraception, some of the problems that we have now, we wouldn't be having. And as you said, there's been some 900,000 copies of that tape distributed. It was made in 1994, I believe. So I've decided to do a new one. I've done a new one this summer with a whole series of other topics. Did in vitro fertilization, I did condensed theology of the body, something on conscience, something on homosexuality, all of which are related issues. We could go further than that, but that's a nice little package right there.
And are they available on what format? Like
there will be both CDs and DVDs. I don't know if we're doing any tapes or not.
Okay.
We might be.
And how can people get a hold of those?
There's a group called Trinity Formation Resources .org that will be distributing the tapes. We're just doing the final editing right now. We did the taping in August. And
we'll put the information up on the screen so people can get them.
Great.
Now, you were also telling me, we were both in Houston a couple of weeks ago. We didn't know it. We found out after we got back, and when we got talking about it, you told me about a very interesting experience you had in Houston.
Yes, there's something happening now, and it's just percolating to the surface, and that is that evangelicals are more and more becoming aware of how destructive contraception is to relationships and to marriage, and that it might not at all be something that's in accord with God's will. I was invited by a professor, James Tour, who holds a chair in chemistry at Rice University, very distinguished academic. He's also a Messianic Jew, belongs to some evangelical church in Houston. And some 2 years ago, he listened to my tape, Contraception, Why Not?, and became convicted that contraception was not in accord with God's will, and that he feels it laid on his heart to do what he can to convince the evangelical community that contraception is wrong.
Isn't that amazing?
It's amazing.
A Messianic Jew, professor at Rice University, here's your tape.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he's a brilliant man, and it's very clear, I spent time with him and his family. I stayed in an apartment over their garage, and they're obviously a very Christian family. They live it. You walk into an atmosphere that, again, a lot of secular people don't even know exists, that you could have a family that's harmonious and that loving and that so much working together for the Lord. So he spent the last summer actually teaching himself the theology of the body. He also seems to know the catechism inside and out. So watching this happen was exhilarating for me. He had me speak to a group at Rice, a very secular place really. On a Friday night, we got 200 students and individuals showing up for
that's amazing.
Friday night.
That really is, yeah.
Yeah, and you know me, I kind of insult anybody I can, and I more or less rebuke the audience. You know, I said, "What are you doing here on a Friday night?" I said, "You know, I get paid to do this." I said, "You know, but you should think I'm a member of the Flat Earth Society. Who's willing to show up hear a talk on contraception? Why not?"
Yeah, that is a good question,
on a Friday
really.
night.
Yeah, right.
But there's a lot of different streams that are sort of flowing together here. And one of them, obviously, in the Catholic Church, I'm there speaking for that. Then you have James Tour, who's evangelical. And I'm sure many of these in the audience were students or individuals who have been influenced by him. He's a fairly young man. He's in his 40s. So I'm praying, hoping I can pass a baton on to James Tour. But and then you have these young college kids in the audience. And I think a lot of them are fed up with the whole sexual revolution. I think it turns their stomach. And I think they're beginning to see that contraception is a part of that picture, that it's really so much destroyed relationships, made sex such an easy, cheap thing as opposed to something extremely profound expression of love. I think more and more women are realizing, in the secular press, I'm astonished at what's come up in the last year of information on how bad the chemical contraceptives are for a woman's whole system. So I see these things coming together in just a spectacular way.
You mean there's actually been articles in secular women's magazines about this?
This is wild. I'm sure it's feminist fashion magazine called Elle, E-L-L-E.
Oh yeah, I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, go to someone should just go and they type in, go to the website for Elle, type in under their search contraception, and two remarkable articles come up. And one of them is basically telling women they've got to get off contraceptives and antidepressants as quickly as possible.
Wow.
That's the message of this article.
Wow.
And the reasons for the two, first of all, a lot of women are taking antidepressants because they're on contraceptives. Contraceptives cause depression. So often women will go to their doctors and they'll say, I'm depressed, and they don't ever figure out, go off the contraceptive. Instead it's, well, now I'll give you an antidepressant as well. Both contraceptives and many antidepressants reduce a woman's sex drive, right? So she's taking two things, one would suppose, in order to help her enjoy life. But at the same time, she's taking something that reduces her libido. Seriously reduces it, to the point where evidently taking the chemical contraceptives make a woman produce a chemical in her system that suppresses her production of testosterone. And testosterone is actually also the source of a woman's sex drive. And just being on it for several months may have lifetime impact on a woman's sex drive. Secondly, it changes a woman's whole hormonal makeup. And that when men and women are interacting, obviously people talk about chemistry, and it is chemistry, all right, that men and women are attracted to each other a great deal through their hormonal exchange. And that when a woman's taking a chemical contraceptive, she's in what's called a pseudo state of pregnancy, right? She has the hormones in her body that she has when she's pregnant. So she doesn't respond to men in the same way, and men don't respond to her in the same way. So what this article says, and there's lots of evidence for it, that women are choosing mates that may not be suitable for them because they're choosing them when they're in a state of pseudo-pregnancy rather than when they're fertile women. And that men and women respond to better when women are going through fertility cycles rather than when she's this sort of year after year state of pseudo-pregnancy. So what this woman is saying, one of the reasons to get off these contraceptives and antidepressants right away is that you will find out that you have a higher sex drive than you had when you were on the contraceptive, but you also might discover that the man you're with is not the man you want to be with. Yeah, this was also on an NBC. NBC had a little 3-minute segment on this, and they called the contraceptive pill the divorce pill, right? Because the phenomena was, that women are on the pill, they go off the pill, and they discover they have a sex drive that they didn't know they had before, and they're not interested in the man they're with. Now, I think it's much more complicated than simply the hormones. I mean, I think that usually, most likely, when a woman is going off the pill, it is because she wants to conceive, right? And then all of a sudden she looks at this man with another set of eyes. Basically, is this man going to be a good provider? Is he the man that I want to be the father of my children? And I've heard many women say, oh yeah, I'm crazy about him, but I would never want him to be the father of my children. Wow. So they make a different decision when they're assessing, and men do too. Yeah. Men assess women very differently. So, yeah, sure, a fun date. But do I want her to be the mother of my children? Maybe not.
Yeah. You know, Janet, we've jumped in here in the middle of an important area. And there's people who have seen your previous programs or seen Kimberly Hawn's program with us who have gotten the background. But could you do a little review here about what's wrong with contraception?
Yeah.
You know, from maybe the theological, spiritual, moral.
Well, you know, the church has fantastic scriptural and theological, natural law justifications for its condemnation of contraception. But first and foremost, I think sometimes it's fairly easy to see, is that it does radically change people's understanding of the meaning and purpose of sexuality. That people should not be having sex with each other unless they're in love, right? Unless they're prepared for babies, right? And they're not prepared for babies until they're married. Right? That's a simple
I think
equation.
that makes a lot of sense. I really do. I tell my kids that.
Radical this day and age.
It really makes a lot of sense.
It's a lot of sense. And that sex is meant to be really an expression of love. And one thing that pains me is that I'm waiting to hear someone use the phrase making love. I don't know when I last heard it. Right? When I was young, people used the phrase all the time. Now, it was a euphemism for having sex. I say having sex all the time. I don't like using that phrase all the time. But you have to say that it's not making love.
Yeah.
That's not what people are doing. So we have rightly expunged that phrase from our vocabulary, because we know it's just having sex. And what you have now, I think, is, again, people having sex before marriage. It's usually those first few sexual relations, and it's amazing we talk that way. There's always a first few sexual relations. So you don't save yourself for marriage. This isn't what you're saving for the person that you're going to make your lifetime commitment with. So I think sex becomes something that is just a matter of physical attraction. It means no commitment. It is not expressing love. Then you get hurt. You feel that you've been exploited. You exploit someone else. So sex is now fraught with all of this kind of ambiguity, negativity, shallowness, as opposed to saving it for marriage as a gift to someone that you expect to have a lifetime relationship with, that it's going to be bringing forth new life. Now it's huge. Now it's of hugely important meaning. It's a precious thing that you offer as a gift to someone else. Yeah. I think people now take into marriage the imprinting that they've had on sex before they were married, right? So they get married, and it's no big deal. And it's like, what is this relationship? Yeah. And you just can't turn over.
That the sexual relationship is supposed to open up to.
Exactly.
It has been
truncated.
Truncated.
Trivializes sexuality because it disconnects sex from its finality, from its object, which is bonding and babies. Somebody once said, family, and having procreation. It's disconnected from that, and now it becomes whatever I want it to be. I name what I want it to be. It can be a contact sport. It could be another form of entertainment. And if I want it to be meaningful, it is meaningful for me. That's kind of the culture that we live in, but disconnecting it from its God-given purpose that's so manifest, that sexuality is meant to lead to family and to children and all, that is where it loses its bearings.
And you know what it also does? It really closes itself off from eternity. Because this is all supposed to open to eternity. This is all supposed to open to the immortality of the human soul. This is all supposed to open up to our destiny in heaven. This is all supposed to open up to the mystery of Christ in the church. I mean, there's a depth to a godly relationship that this is a dimension of that gets cut off.
The secular world, if they hear Catholics talk about marriage, they would find it laughable. That you're talking, that it images the relationship that Christ had with his church, right? That this is a love relationship. Again, you say it's a relationship that is altogether ordained to bringing forth new life for an eternity. And that's what husband and wife are, right? That they are entered into that relationship of absolute, complete fidelity, unconditional love, ordained towards eternity. Now, if you talk about sex, though, I say, what does that have to do with sex? Right. Sex is just some physical act that two people who happen to have an attraction to each other have.
Yeah, it's really tragic to see it robbed of its depth, of its meaning, of its beauty, of its ongoing purpose. Well, let's take a little break here, and we're actually going to take a look at a pro-life message, and then we're going to come back for some more.
All right, great.
Be a fireman when I grow up. I want to be a teacher.
I want to be president of the United States.
I want to find a cure for cancer.
The choice to have an abortion alters the course of the future. Please remember, where there's life, there's hope. A message from Priests for Life.
Hey, welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Janet Smith, who's on the faculty at Sacred Heart Seminary in the Archdiocese of Detroit. And we're right in the middle of it, aren't we, Janet? We're right in the middle, Peter, of this horrible thing that's happening right before our eyes, where people are being totally sold short on the dignity of human beings, on the potential for real relationship and real love and real family life and you know, living life as God intended to be. And it's tragic. It's really a sign in some ways of the collapse of the Christian influence, Christian culture, Christendom, but it's also a sign, I think, of the confusion in the church. What's really hard is that so much of this confusion flooded into people because of the trumpet didn't give a clear signal. I mean, the people in charge of guarding the flock, of teaching the faith, kept quiet, or sometimes worse, they kind of promoted false teaching. And we're now in a mess.
That's right. That's right.
But hey, God is raising up people like you to kind of sound a clear note in the trumpet, and troops are rallying.
I often feel like I'm a one-note trumpet, but yeah.
Well, there's other instruments in the orchestra. There's other trumpet players who are doing other notes, but you know, together.
This is one of the places where, remember how often Pope John Paul II talked about the culture of life, culture of death, and the conflict, and you see how, for me, you can see it here so clearly, that it's the whole contraceptive mentality is not welcoming to life. Marriage was meant to be a place where you welcome life.
And it's holding back from commitment, too.
Right.
It's hedging the bets of the gift of to each other.
I think men often understand that if you describe for a male the difference between what kind of commitment he's making in a contraceptive act and what kind of commitment he's making in a non-contraceptive act, he knows the difference. Contraceptive means it's just a momentary act. Men who are willing to engage in a non-contraceptive act of sexual intercourse, who have any sense of responsibility, know that they're making a lifetime commitment. That's what they understand. That's what the body is saying. That I am willing to bring forth new life with you, and I know that means a lifetime commitment.
Yeah, I'm ready to stand by you and stand by the fruit of this.
And that's the importance of saying that over and over and over again in marriage. And so, marriages that don't use contraception, that's what spouses are saying with their body all the time. And the woman knows that. The woman knows that he's willing to engage in non-contraceptive sex for me. That means he's here for the long haul. So it's that glue that just keeps bonding in the relationship. And that's why Professor Tour was so interested in this in Houston, because he said the evangelicals are, obviously, as we all are, appalled at the divorce rate. He says they have all sorts of seminars that are directed towards divorce-proofing your marriage. Right? Divorce-proofing your marriage.
The evangelicals are great on seminars.
Yes.
They just really have them.
So this is where he wants to get his wedge. He wants to say if the studies show that those who contracept have over 50% divorce rate, and those who use natural family planning have, an infinitesimal divorce rate, it's a no-brainer. It's simply a no-brainer. If you say it's very, very important for us not to divorce. Again, and I tell people that people are starting to see this pattern now all the time. People contracept before, they have sex before marriage, possibly the median number of sexual partners is around 3 or more. They contracept before marriage, they get married, they contracept, then they stop for a short period of time to conceive a child, then they contracept again, then they stop for a short period of time to conceive another child, then they get a vasectomy, then honestly there's usually an affair, and then there's divorce. And that is the pattern that one sees over and over again in our culture. Again, with my friends who are using natural family planning, divorce is just, as I say, murder is thinkable, but divorce is unthinkable.
That is interesting, Janet, because one of the sad things to me is people who've been married for 20, 25 years, then getting a divorce. And it's interesting how you say there's something that was under the surface there.
The bonding didn't happen.
Yeah.
Those contraceptive acts of sexual intercourse are they're just not bonding. It seems to me there's a degree alienating, because you're treating your spouse as though your spouse were not a spouse, right? You're treating your spouse as though you're someone that you're having an affair with, someone that you want a momentary pleasure with, as opposed to someone with whom you want to have a lifetime commitment. So if you falsify, that John Paul II spoke about contraceptive sex as being a kind of a lie, right? That you're not saying with your body what this act is meant to say.
Yeah, we've got to cover some more ground of explanation, because we're jumping in the middle here, and it's really good stuff, but the Catholic Church doesn't teach that you're supposed to have as many babies as you possibly can biologically. So that's where the whole natural family planning comes in. So what is this natural family planning thing, and what does the
Does
Catholic...
it really work?
Yeah.
Does it really work?
And what does the Catholic Church teach about how many children you should have, and what's the difference between natural family planning and contraception? So, crash course.
Crash course. Well, again, even in a world in which we're ecologically sensible, I mean, it makes perfect sense that a woman can figure out her cycle very easily. Right? That a woman's, actually, she ovulates only once a month, and the egg lives within her body for only 24 hours, and it can be fertilized for only 12. So there's only a 12-hour window every month where a woman can get pregnant. A woman's body indicates certain signs of when she's getting, there's about a 5 to 10 day section of each month where she's fertile, and that's because she produces a certain sort of mucus that helps carry the sperm to meet the egg. Before that period begins, she cannot possibly get pregnant because there's no egg there to be fertilized, there's no mucus there to carry the sperm to meet the egg. After she ovulates, the mucus dries up. If she doesn't get pregnant, the egg dies. There's about a 12-day period at the end of the month where she cannot possibly get pregnant. So usually there's a 8 to 9 day at the beginning period of any month, and a 12-day cycle period at the end of her menstrual cycle where she cannot possibly get pregnant. 93% of women with observation, 1 month of observation of their bodily signs, can figure out how that works. It's every bit as effective as any form of contraception. You know, people say NFP doesn't work, and I said, well, start listening. Start listening to the number of women who say, that's my pill baby, that's my diaphragm baby, that's my condom baby. You know, and you know, it's a disgusting way to talk about your baby, but it does indicate that contraception has its failure rate too. Right? So natural family planning is extremely effective when people are disciplined in following the signs.
A lot of people don't take the trouble to find out how to really do it, and they have this vague notion that you abstain for part of the month, but they don't really find out how the body really works and how to respect the rhythms of the body.
And I can't tell you how many women have discovered fertility problems by doing this. They didn't know that they weren't infertile, right, until they started observing their signs, or they have other health problems. I have a young friend who, before she got married, learned natural family planning, and then she got married. Her cycles were like 18 to 21 days. And she went to a doctor, and she said, I have such short cycles. And he said, well, sometimes that happens. It might correct itself. Don't worry about it. And I said, she told me about this. I said, sounds like something's wrong. I said, go see a doctor that knows more about women's cycles than your doctor seems to. She went to a doctor, put her on a vitamin Optivite. She now has perfect 28-day cycles. She didn't seem to be fertile before. She didn't have any signs of this fertile mucus. That is coming because she's getting the right vitamins in her system. So as a diagnostic tool for women to know whether they're fertile and to take the vitamins and eat the diet that they need in order to have a healthy cycle, it's a benefit in every respect, not to mention what it does for the men in their relationships. When men learn to discipline themselves in this way, again, when they realize that their sexual drives are at the service of making love to their wives and building a family, as opposed to just, again, a physical encounter, they grow in maturity, they grow in their ability to show love, they grow in their commitment to this relationship.
That's where the real conversion needs to happen, right there, you know, in terms of guys being able to embrace that. And really, conversion's a good word, I think, because to live this teaching, you need grace.
It takes a deeper commitment to Christ.
Yeah, if you know this is the Lord's will for you, you love the Lord, and you have real living faith, the real Catholic, you really live in, you're looking at the sacraments for strength and support, you can do this. You really can do that. We do it. We know other people, it's not easy at times, but you can do it. And a lot of times
I think particularly, you're right, Peter, particularly for the man, it requires
there's conviction in the heart.
A deeper commitment to truth, a deeper commitment to love, a deeper willingness to say no to disordered desires and to selfishness. And it's transformation. It's growing in holiness.
Men know they can do it. I mean, I think men know. Men know they can do it. They can do athletic prowess. They can do this. A lot of women don't know that men can do it. A lot of women don't. They've never met men who are like that. And if they were, they would say, "I want that kind of man," because those men are really, they are so responsible about their sexuality, about their family. They're so selfless. They are really so in love with their wives. I met a woman who said, you know, she and her husband did it right. They didn't have sex before marriage, right? They didn't contracept within marriage. They said they've only used natural family planning when they needed to control their family size. Been married 23 years. She said he only has eyes for me. She said he hasn't noticed that she's got varicose veins. He hasn't noticed that she's gained 15 pounds. He says he probably does too, of course. But you know,
He's changing shape too, I'm sure. Yeah.
My guess is, you know. But she just said he's so in love with me, and she said, I think it's because we followed the rules, right? We did it right, and most women don't know that that's in a range of possibility for relationships.
Yeah, yeah.
All these TV shows that are on, like Desperate Housewives and things like this, it's projecting to women to say you can be, in essence, you can be just like a man, and that's what you should be like. You know, you should begin to treat sex as an adventure and use the power in it to control people, to get what you want, and this whole image is constantly bombarding young women with this and trying to say these are what beautiful together, really strong women are like. You know, they play with sex like men play with it.
Yeah, one of the most evil programs I think that's ever been on TV is Sex and the City, which embodied this. You know, I think I've seen 1 or 2 episodes, but I've heard people talking about it, and it just embodies this whole thing as sex is something you do apart from relationship.
Especially really together, cosmopolitan, strong women. This is what they're like. They play around just like men.
But women what they're doing to themselves is so foolish. One of these studies shows, there's some hormonal studies I've been telling you about, shows they had this group of men and they put them in a room and they showed them pictures of supermodels, right? And they rated which women, you know, how attractive they thought they were. Of course, the supermodels, all very attractive. Then they put something in the room, some sort of cloth that had fertile female hormones in it, right? Now, hormones are exchanged through the sense of smell, right? So these men were in the room they were smelling fertile feminine hormones, looking at average women on the screen.
Give us a 10-second version.
They found those women more attractive than they found the supermodels, right? So that women naturally have a faculty for attracting men, and that happens to be their natural femininity, their fertile human sexual feminine relationships, and that attracts men more than these cold Sex and the City supermodels.
Thank you so much, Dr. Janet Smith, and we just got a few seconds left, but there's truth here that we've heard here today. There's really important truth here, and I've written a booklet. It's called My 5 Most Important Decisions, and we'd like you to have it so you can make some decisions for truth in your life, because truth will set you free, truth will lead you to love, truth will lead you to the joy that passes understanding. Just call the 800 number, write for the address, and we'll send it right off to you. Until next week, this is Ralph Martin and Janet Smith and Peter Herbeck wishing you the very best. A life lived in harmony with the truth and love and life of God Himself.
Every day we're faced with decisions both great and small. Some decisions seem small and insignificant, while others can be confusing and overwhelming.
Where should I go to college? Is this the right job for me?
Should we start a family?
But God has called each one of us into existence for a purpose, a glorious and eternal purpose.
Hi, I've written a booklet called My 5 Most Important Decisions, and I think you'll find these decisions really useful for your own life as well. To receive the free booklet, call Renewal Ministries at 1-800-282-4789, or write to us at the address on your screen, or visit us on the web at renewalministries.net.